But as I was saying, both my father and grandfather worked with their hands, and they were carpenters and masons. And I started at a very young age working with tools, dealing with space, remodeling kitchens, that sort of thing. And that's a lot of what this is about. It's in a way a commercial job. It's a remodel job. What I have done is taken a space and remodeled it. Want to come through? This was a perfect space to take over for many reasons. It had boundaries. Hallways are basically what I consider thoughtless space. When you're traveling through the hallway, you're not really thinking about the space that you're walking through. It's almost like an airport corridor. Rarely do you think about the color, the floor, the angle, the roof sloping down, whatever. You're just getting from point A to point B. Now, when I first started doing this piece, a friend helped me document some earlier work. And I asked him what I could do to pay him back, and he said, do something for my doors. And that was Don Anton. And Don Anton used to teach photography here. So he asked me to do something for his doorway, and once I looked at his door and realized that there was this other door and that there was this whole little unit, I developed a whole wall piece. Because often it seems like a dialogue is more interesting than a monologue. And as soon as I realized that there was two doors, then I could play off of both doors. So one door could be male, one door could be female. It's like I use that the dualities of life, over and over. Well, the two doorways are a good example because one doorway has the two polarities. Number one is the piece itself. You have 90 degrees. You have straight walls. You've got square door openings. You have a hallway which is very geometric, and I think that geometry is very. And I may be wrong, but I think that the geometry, the buildings that we live in, we live in a masculine world. I think it was, whether it came from the Greeks or the Egyptians or where this sort of Assyrians, where this idea of geometry and this reality that we exist in and live and move through comes from. I think it's a masculine reality. It's the marketplace reality. This is what is functional. When you build a building, you don't build curvilinear. You build angular. Straight walls are cheaper to build than curving walls. And so basically, I think in my heart, I believe I started with a masculine space, and I put overlaid a feminine, organic kind of a space over it. I tried to deny the rectilinear. The angular, I tried to soften it with curves, And the curvilinear, it's just like the forms that I deal with, in many ways, speak to me more about the feminine side. But there's that edge to it. Up on top here, you see that there's that sawtooth edge. Mm-hmm. It has the cutting edge of a saw that is like cutting through space, but it also has the plant-like qualities of cypress trees that are like blowing in the wind. Mm-hmm. But yet they're also the cypress trees that are projecting up like the Washington Monument. They're definitely masculine in that respect. There's the Starry Night, It's my Starry Night, but it would not have been my Starry Night without Van Gogh, And Van Gogh put the cypress trees up there and twirling around. Well, sure, I got like cypress trees coming off of that saw blade, I collage from everything that I've experienced or witnessed. Everything is fair game. But in a way, I think I owe my debt of this type of imagery, not this type of imagery, but, well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is Cézanne. See, Cézanne took the picture plane, and he said, this is the picture plane, and he started like working his way back, out to the viewer. Whereas before that, Renaissance space said the picture plane is a window, and then you go back into illusionistic space. This is my understanding of it. I'm not an art historian, but as I understand it, you look at those old paintings, and they all talk about this space going in, the basic Renaissance window. Cézanne said he started sculpting space. You look at his table, things are like everything is like skewed, where it's like apples are falling off the table, and it's like coming forward, coming forward, coming forward. He is one of the people that I think I have a debt to. Frank Stella is another person. He actually started saying, yeah, well, let's start actually building, you know, these things coming out. And Frank Stella, I saw an exhibit of Frank Stella's in London 5 years ago, and I remember thinking, this man, I like the way, these are paintings. You know. I deal with a lot of myths in here, and Jonah and the Whale is just one of them. Because you have the threshold, you know, and you have this sort of like entrance. And when the hero enters into the temple, or enters into themselves, and they are able to become transformed, and they can like wrestle the dragon or whatever it is, and then come out digested and more than what they were when they first passed through.
Somehow the way you talk about it in mythological terms, that I get the idea that you might be a reader of Joseph Campbell.
Well, definitely. I mean, anybody who's making art and is living today should be probably aware of him. I mean, he's definitely a prominent figure, and the idea that, well, see, this is like the cave wall too. You see, and that's something that I go back to. The idea of the cave, the cathedral, they're basically the same thing to me. It's like he's telling a story, or he's retelling a story that was once known to everybody, and sure, I mean, as I probably will reread him, you know, 10 years from now, or go back into him and see things that I didn't know now. It's like I don't try to illustrate his stuff, but I do pay attention to what he calls following one's bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, why are we here on the planet? And what are we doing? And you know, the people that I've reached with this piece and the other piece that I did and the other gallery, I'm sort of like telling old stories. I'm not really telling new stories. In a way, I'm updating them because I'm adding the Partridge Family and you know, the different Viewmasters. I collage stuff from our culture and adventures, or you know, whatever it is. I feel like I have you know, it's just as a cave person who was a cave artist was using the materials that he had or she had at hand. I feel it's the same access, you know. And so what I'm doing is decorating the cave. I mean, this is a perfect...
That's your master's thesis too, right?
This is my master's thesis for an MA at Humboldt. Right.
So is the Jonah and the Whale thing, is there any kind of linkage between, you know, the old academic, all of it, you know, getting swallowed by the academic whale, and you have even referred to that as the ass end?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. There's this is much more the mouth and coming out at the other end. You know, I never really played with that idea very much, but I can see how it could pertain. I mean, I was like going out into making new territory, or you know, it's like they let me go out on the ice and come back with a vision. And then, you know, I talk about Joseph Campbell. He talks about a lot of times that the vision quest, you know, going out, and that maybe Jonah and the whale is part of that. Is that the hero is swallowed by a whale, and he's digested and comes out transformed. And maybe that's what graduate school has been for me. I have come out much different than when I came in. I was doing paintings, flat, square paintings. Well, I've realized that the world is not flat. And it is not square, you know. The world is round and bumpy, and I've been able to evolve, you know, and make art that is round and bumpy. While I was working on the piece, I felt like this bulletin board became like my sketchbook.
Talk a little bit about some of the people in the world.
Sure. Frances Crowe, Quaker woman in New England, was drafted during Vietnam, and I did not want to. I knew that. I couldn't go to Vietnam. My brother was there. I couldn't. That wasn't an option. I knew I didn't want to go to jail. Frances Crowe she was doing draft resistance and counseling. She probably helped 10,000 boys in New England. I mean, she's an amazing woman. She's in her 70s now, very active in prison reform, women's rights in prisons. one of the most dynamic people I know. Adolfo Romero is a man that I worked with for 10 years down in New Mexico, where I learned much of my masonry work. I built adobe homes and did fireplaces, tile floors, plastering, a lot of plastering work with Adolfo Romero. Of course, Jack Kerouac, when I was a kid in high school, reading Jack Kerouac, getting out of New England. After high school, it was time to go on the road, hit the road. And so his work was very powerful for getting me out, away from... It's like when you're growing up, you're living in this spiral, this tight spiral of where you are. And sometimes to break out to that outer edge, it takes a little of effort, to get out. And Jack Kerouac's work was a part of that. Somebody up here, Romano Gabriel, his work influenced me a lot as far as somebody who was not making pictures, not putting paintings on pedestals. He filled up his front yard with trees and people and animals and very satirical work, political work. He showed me that art is a birthright and it's instinctual. You do not have to go to art school to be an artist. And another person like Romano Gabriel would be Simon Rodia, who did the Watts Towers for 30-something years down in L.A. The Watts Towers, I remember the first time I saw them, experienced them. It's like this, I want to do stuff like this, And I didn't know at that point how to get from doing paintings, doing flat work, to doing work. I mean, Simon Rodia was he was an old tile guy. He'd done tile, and he saved all the scraps and odds and ends forever. And, he's made collage with all this cement and tile work. Of course, Henry Miller and Aeneas Nin. Pablo Neruda, about the earth, or the sea, and renewal of nature, and the difficulties of human relationships. Pablo Neruda, great poet and writer. Of course, I got Vincent van Gogh. Alexander Calder. My God, what a man who knew how to play and played all his life, There's a great little film over in the library, Calder Circus. Every art student should see it. It should be mandatory. That man knows how to live life, And here's a teacher here, Mr. C, Roger Cinnamon. I had him at CR, and I learned quite a bit from Roger. At that point, when I met him, I needed to be talking about, certain ideas and myths and stories that he knew and would share. I got Robert Gilkerson. Here's an artist up in McKinleyville that I see his work and I think, my God, this man's doing it. He's I don't know how old Bob is, but to look at him, you would never think this is an artist, And you look at his work and it's phenomenal work. Robert Gilkerson's work. I see it every chance I can. Anytime that he has a show or an exhibit, I try to go and see it because I really respect the man and his vision. I mean, he's true. You see a work and you say that's got to be one of Robert's works. I mean, he's got a voice and he's true to it. As just Joseph Campbell would say, he's following his bliss. He's not trying to copy anybody but himself. Goes on. Hieronymus Bosch, here's a guy that, I don't know, 1400s, something like that, making these paintings. I remember as a kid, teenager seeing Hieronymus Bosch paintings and thinking, my God, what are these? Number one, not knowing what they're about, and number two, not even being able to comprehend the time frame in which he did them, So it's a list that goes on. I have my daughter's name up here, Hillary Claire Fisher White. She has taught me so much. I mean, as children, a lot of times have access to imagery and painting and art that as you become an adult and adulterated, you lose a certain bit of that fluidity, of the voice coming out. And I've learned so much from my daughter. It's been one of those dialogue, give and take. I love working together, Got a few more minutes?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, we could probably do that. This in here was one of the